Now, what about the odds he'll take on the media establishment that loves and protects China 24/7? The answer, zero, no chance. And understanding how Xi views the United States at this point is also critical in any interaction or crisis dealing with China. Now, right now, Xi sees us as a power in decline. He sees us as weak and self-loathing, a country that is culturally depraved and politically divided. But he sees his communist system as superior in every way. He's a nationalist, and he's aiming for nothing short of global domination. And to get there, his priorities range from the substantive, the Belt and Road Initiative type stuff, to the frivolous, like his banning effeminate male characters on TV. Remember that? Oh, and by the way, when he did that thing with the effeminate male characters, he knew that the American film industry would never protest or complain that that was discriminatory or anti-LGBTQ. They wouldn't complain one bit. Heck, when was the last time you saw a Chinese villain on the big screen? And Xi knows, by the way, that key GOP establishment figures, they don't lose sleep about China's monopolization of key industries. Of course not. The only thing that motivates them is money. And a lot of money buys China a lot of political cover in Congress. Xi knows all of this because he's watched it unfold over the past 25 years. Which brings us back to the current nightmare in Ukraine. Now, Biden could demand that John Kerry go out and say that the administration's climate change goals on hold, at least as long as China remains a destabilizing force on the world. He could also say that as long as the CCP is trying to, by proxy, overthrow Zelensky in Ukraine, we're not going to abandon our oil and gas industries. But, of course, the Biden people would never do something so sensible. And as a result, we might as well just have an adult beverage because we have zero leverage. Countries formerly helpful to the U.S. are looking eastward. Think about Saudi Arabia, which just invited Xi for a visit amidst another blunder by the United States. And the U.S. is either, at this point, looking at all the things that have happened, they're either going to get stronger by getting its own economic house in order and begin decoupling from these despotic regimes like China, or the world is going to get more dangerous and more chaotic. In the meantime, the only Ukraine negotiations that are going to happen in this scenario are the types of negotiations that, let's say, go on between a cat and a mouse. The cat's going to toy around with the mouse, then pounce when the time is right, because it knows it can. And that's the angle. Joining me now is Stephen Mosier, president of the Population Research Institute, author of Bully of Asia. Stephen, the readouts from this meeting today were quite something to behold. The U.S. sends Jake Sullivan, who's thought to be one of the hawks in the Biden administration, to deal with this top Chinese diplomat. From your sense, what came out of that meeting?
Well, I think the Biden administration was a day late and a dollar short in approaching China for help. I mean, Russia went to China 4 months ago and signed a new shipping agreement to help them avoid any future sanctions or embargo. So anyone who says that China doesn't have Russia's back just has to look at the new shipping agreement, which says that anything shipped from Russian ports to China belongs to China as soon as it's put on the ship. So we can't seize the ship, we can't seize the cargo. That happened 4 months ago. And of course, as you mentioned, Putin went to Beijing right before the Olympics, signed a 5,000-word agreement pledging eternal friendship. 5,000-word agreements don't get negotiated overnight. So this collusion, this is the real Russian collusion, Laura, between Russia and China. And to claim now, as Jake Sullivan did, that, well, we're going to enlist China in the effort to help contain Russia and stop the carnage in Ukraine is just nonsense, because that ship has sailed.
Well, the CCP keeps twisting the knife on Biden, Stephen. This is the editorial from the Chinese, basically media organ, Global Times. It's brutal. Judging from the posture, it is the U.S. that needs to ask China for help in the context of Russia-Ukraine conflict. And it went on to say various other things about, how this whole thing unfolded. and saying the United States, essentially, how dare you think that you can swing around your influence in the world? Like, what gives you, the United States, this idea that you're this strong power now? It was super humiliating to have that kind of commentary come out of this meeting. So what's the point of this meeting if it ended up just being another moment for China to humiliate us?
Well, there's been a whole series of meetings like that between China and the United States since the Biden administration took office. Who can forget the Alaska meeting at which our Secretary of State was harangued for minutes on end about all of the problems of America and how America shouldn't try to dictate to the rest of the world how it behaves. Make no mistake, Xi Jinping has a China dream. And his China dream is to dominate the world by 2049 and to do it in stages. And he's already taken Hong Kong. He's looking at Taiwan, but he won't stop there. He will move on other countries near China as well. And what he would like to do, and I think how he sees this whole Ukrainian thing unfolding, is to get Russia into China's orbit permanently, to make Russia, with all of its vast mineral and natural resource, oil and gas, a kind of vassal state of China, thus uniting Eurasia in pursuit of his China dream. So I think we need to step back, and I pray that the carnage in Ukraine ends right now. But we need to step back and think about what the world is going to look like after that happens. And if we have created a Eurasian empire dominated by China, then we're going to face a formidable opponent in the decades to come.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to this, again, this is the state media organ of China. This is their, it's their spin on this. But the U.S. is the instigator of the Ukraine crisis, yet it wants to exploit the whole world to expand its own strategic interests. Well, you could flip that on China. You're the instigator. You're funding Russia with the oil and the agricultural exports, the agreement that you just said. But this is what China always does. But just back to my point about diplomacy and why we need real diplomats to deal with these savvy negotiators and these people will cut you with a knife in China. You cannot set up a meeting where the upshot of it is that our national security advisor gets mocked for asking China for help. That's what they're doing here in this communique. It's mocking the United States on the world stage. It is an embarrassment for us.
Absolutely. These things should have been hammered out ahead of time. And when it was clear, as it should have been clear, that China wasn't going to play ball because it wants to draw Russia into its orbit. It's happy to let Vladimir Putin chew off a little bloody piece of Ukraine if that will bring Russia into China's orbit permanently. And make no mistake, the wheat is already being shipped from Russia to China. The oil and gas are flowing as well. And this will only continue. So to the extent that we see a tectonic shift in the world today, we're looking at another Sino-Russian empire, kind of like the Sino-Soviet, collusion that we had during the 1950s.
Well, we can't. America's got to get our economic house in order. We're no good to anyone else. That's what we're seeing with all this. We are not negotiating from a position of strength. Trump understood that. Stephen, great to see you tonight. And peace talks between